in this patch.
So let's get started with the
skills,
buffs
we're now,
and nerfs,
we're
probably.
able to get skill ranks on them starting in season 6.
Oh yeah, ultimates will actually be good.
But now once
season.
you get them up to rank 5, you're going to get a special bonus. And we found these to be really flashy and fun on the PTR. People love playing with ultimates, and you get to cast them more often. They've got more effects. They had some scaling to ways to scale their damage with these rank 5 bonuses.
The new summoner.
We did find that some of those exact scaling numbers were a little on the higher side.
No, I want it to be
more powerful and kind of crowding out non-ultimate builds. Right. We love that people are playing these, and we want them to be powerful. But there are certainly some times when it's a little too much, and it feels like you can't play anything else. Right. So we are taking a pass across the board on some of those ultimate scalings to bring them down just a little bit, but we still expect them to be very powerful and very fun. Secondarily, we've got the summons update. This was a big pass across.
Yeah, the Druid summons supposed to be really good.
Necromancer, their skeletons, Druid companions, Rogue Shadow Clone is a big one.
Oh yes.
And then even Sorcerer Conjurations and the Barbarian Ancients even. So for the summons
that's going to be really hard because it lasts for like what 3 or 4 seconds. It's like super short.
What happened was all of the damage that your summons do is going to be attributed to the player and not to a separate entity that's kind of separated from you. And what that ultimately means is that all of those summons will now inherit your damage bonuses more consistently. Anything that says you deal increased damage affects your summons. Just out of the box, it works for everything. It's just more consistent interaction across the board. Any of your lucky hit effects that says, hey, you've got a lucky hit chance to stun an enemy. All of the damage from your summons also can trigger that.
Wow.
Now.
That's actually a pretty big update.
Great for consistency across the board. Previously, it was sometimes inconsistent what would work with what. And I'm particularly excited about Shadow Clone, as we'll talk about in the Rogue section coming up. But that was one that historically really never hit the mark for an ultimate skill. And with this new update, we think Shadow Clone is going to really live up to the promise of like really duplicating your actions in a way that feels meaningful and does tons of damage exactly like you'd expect it to.
Oh, it's going to be very powerful. I'm looking forward to it. And summons truly are just an extension of you now and all of your power. They're inheriting all of that properly, and they're going to blast. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. The one last kind of big picture item that we took away from the PTR was about crowd control effects. We noticed that there's a whole lot of what I'd call incidental crowd control effects, things that happen from lucky hits or procs, specifically from the Worldly Fortune Tempering Manual that gives you lucky hit, chance to stun, or chance to freeze an enemy, as well as particularly from the Fist of Fate unique item. We found that it was often the most common way to build your character in the late game was to really stack up these effects, and then you're just applying a lot of crowd control on this lucky hit cadence rather than actively pressing crowd control buttons or really opting into it. And we do think that once it gets to a certain point of that, it can make our combat less engaging, where enemies just randomly get stunned or frozen without you really having too much input into that. But then it also makes it very frustrating when you don't lucky hit and an enemy hits you that you expected to have got hit with this. So we're looking to potentially address that in a future season or future updates.
I really don't mind if they remove lucky hit, like genuinely.
Control here in season 7, but
I wouldn't
one
mind
of those examples of the
if they
learnings
just changed it.
That we're going to take forward to future seasons and potentially look at improving this so that we can make our combat feel that much more engaging and actually get a little bit of back and forth between you and the enemies, a bit more than there currently is, especially in the hyper late game situation when your characters are really maxed out. So with that in mind, let's get on to some of the individual classes, starting with the Barbarian.
All right.
So the Barbarian
what are the buffs and the nerfs?
Season 7 PTR was performing quite solidly. We were pretty happy with where Barbarian landed. We are really excited about Hammer of the Ancients and this Earthquake build with the new unique, which we'll show in a moment. We do think the Hammer of the Ancients part of that maybe could use a little bit more numerical buffs, so we threw some buffs there, as well as to Whirlwind. That build was definitely falling a bit behind some of the other builds. But on the whole, we definitely expect Barbarian to be really powerful and a strong option going forward. Let's take a look at that new unique item, the Mantle of Mountain's Fury.
Unique, guys.
Oh, yes.
This empowers your Hammer of the Ancients to
plus
cause a
up to
seismic
6
line, and if that line hits an earthquake,
was that GA? Was that plus 9
for massive damage? And then fire explosion. Looks so sweet.
It's very intense.
That's an insane
very powerful, and right on the Barbarian fantasy of just hitting things with big weapons, making earthquakes, making explosions.
Yeah, that's ludicrous.
And you have a chance for it to deal double damage.
Like, the
you have so many
good
is
like hit the
GAs
ground and
you have
smash
2.
it. And this is just taking that and
armor's not
amplifying it
bad.
by like 100 times.
Oh, absolutely.
And then 100x damage.
And to see how this build performs in Season of the Witchcraft.
So Barbarian looking pretty strong,
boys, the Sorceress.
For sure.
So the Sorceress, kind of in contrast to the Barbarian, was by far the weakest class on the PTR. No getting around that. We made some adjustments going into this season that we think maybe overshot and brought Sorceress down a little further than we'd be happy with. Particularly changes to Conjuration and Burning bonuses. We're happy with how that affected build variety, but the overall power level suffered. So with that in mind, we're going to do a lot of buffs mainly on the passive effects for the class to really kind of bring all of their numbers up by just a little bit across the board.
Okay.
I specifically wanted to call out our changes to Searing Heat and Icefall. These are legendary Paragon nodes that previously were very build specific, like you would only use Searing Heat in a Burning build. We've made some tweaks to it where it's still good in a Burning build, it's probably better, but it also has some applications across all builds and all damage types. So these will just be a little bit more generically applicable, but still very good for the build that they were initially intended for.
Okay, so can we see them?
With that in mind, I want to show some of the updates to Firebolt enchantment. This is one that we have.
Oh, because before you always had to have it.
And we thought even on the PTR it wasn't quite hitting the mark. So now, dealing burning damage, if you take this enchantment, will have a chance to heal you for some of your maximum life, which it already did, and it also unleashes a bonus Firebolt onto a nearby enemy. So that you can see in this clip here, when enemies are burning, they're just randomly firing off some extra Firebolts to nearby enemies that can really help.
So maybe you can make a Firebolt
and
build.
Take down big packs.
Yeah, it's its own little chain Firebolt now.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, wanted to highlight some of the new uniques coming in this season. So Sorceress has 2. The Strike of Stormhorn is a unique focus that's going to modify your ball lightning to give you super ball lightnings sometimes. So it'll always fire out straight forward and it's a little bit faster.
What's the chance?
And occasionally you'll get the super ball lightning, which will explode for a big chunk of damage at the end
chance to cast twice.
Shape, and also stun enemies.
It's kind of like going bowling.
Exactly, and you get a strike with Stormhorn. Exactly.
And it's 100x.
You could take the other unique focus that is being introduced in this season, Okun's Catalyst, to kind of play Bolt Lightning the way it's often been played.
So we're getting season 2 again. We got Hodabar.
We've done some rework.
We got the ball lightning sword.
Previously did that, and now it will be in this unique, where the ball lightnings will orbit around you and do damage to enemies who are close by. You really want to get close and in that action, whereas with Strike of Stormhorn, you're playing at a little bit more of a range.
Right.
We really like how we're doing these like paired uniques where you kind of have a choice. Hey, what focus do I want to use? They are going to be mutually exclusive. You can't have both.
But
that's because they're so different and they're different play styles. But we think putting these into different uniques gives us the space to really live up this fantasy, give you lots of affixes and bonuses.
Well, the other one was 100x. This is 180x.
Enhance that.
Is there any way that you choose the other one over this?
Yeah,
like this one's just way better,
really
right?
Gives you that like transformative ball lightning experience, which is like the orbiting ball lightning. But Strike of Stormhorn kind of just amplifies the original ball lightning experience, which is just shoot it out and have it explode in this magnificent blast.
And you cast it while moving too.
I love that we are allowing both.
Another nice quality of life.
Absolutely.
All
right, on to the next class. We've got
one of my
Druid.
second builds.
So Druid on the PTR did have one bugged build. One of their legendary Paragon nodes was causing their damage to scale way higher than we intended. Occasionally would even kind of break the game and go, you'd see negative damage numbers. Definitely not intended. We fixed that bug. But despite that, we think Druid on the whole was still in a solid place, even without that.
Ooh, Blurred Beast rework.
We've made a number of adjustments and reworked the Blurred Beast aspect. This is one that we had tried out a rework on the PTR, and it wasn't quite hitting the mark. It wasn't quite as engaging to play as we had hoped, so we did a rework to it to help improve the shred builds for Werewolf. Additionally, I wanted to highlight some of the Spirit Boon updates. These were the Druid class mechanic. You get these Spirit Boons. Historically, they've been a little bit falling behind, and we've done some big buffs here to make them really powerful. I especially like the Gift of the Stag. It's my favorite one. It gives you passive spirit generation every second.
Yeah.
That really helps smooth out the Druid's early game in particular when they're struggling to really get their resource engine online. They were definitely one of the slower classes early on, and I think this update to the Spirit Boons is going to really help that.
Yeah, totally. And that's just such a great example of how the update is going to help them, because Druids have typically struggled with generating spirit in the early game, and so having more access to that's going to help a ton.
Yeah. Let's take a look at a clip of the new Blur Beast rework. Okay. So on the PTR, it would do some bonus strikes based on how far you traveled. Now your shred will just always have a chance to land additional strikes, but it's going to roll that randomness 4 times. So if you get real lucky on your shred, you're going to hit so many times on that target, which really helps.
So you get 75x more damage.
Fantasy of werewolf striking fast, striking multiple times.
Yeah, this aspect
so
is
it's 33
super fun
times
to play,
4?
and I absolutely love what the art team did with this, combining the mechanics of that feedback on the extra strikes with the actual additional
almost triple damage
going out. It looks awesome.
All right, on to the Rogue. So the Rogue
most
was
excited
a very
class.
strong class on the PTR. We thought it was in a great spot, very powerful.
Shadow Clone's what I want to play at the start.
Yeah.
Rain of Arrow builds were already a pretty common, pretty powerful build.
Yeah, they haven't talked about
season,
Spiritborn yet.
But with the new changes to introduce the additional scaling damage on it, they were just absolutely top.
I wish they would show these numbers though, because if this is balanced,
of course, as part of addressing the ultimate changes across the board, we did bring down the scaling a little bit on Rain of Arrows. But we do think that's still going to be a very compelling choice. Rogue and ultimate skills are going to be just fine going forward into the season.
It'll be good.
Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about Shadow Clone. I know I teased that earlier with the summons update.
Yeah, show us
Shadow Clone was probably one of the biggest updates in this season to really make sure it worked with all of your damage, all of your bonus effects, all of your procs, and especially work with a lot of your legendary effects that modify your skills.
Grasp of Shadows.
If you had, say, if you're using Flurry and you had the aspect of Encircling Blades that would cause Flurry to hit all around you,
but now it's going to work.
Your Shadow Clone wouldn't know that you have that. It would just kind of attack like a normal Flurry. With this update, it'll now copy all of your legendary effects.
I'm telling you guys, lock and Rogue, this is going to be massive.
It comes from the Shadow Clone. And it works with all of those
especially with Grasp of Shadows.
And that's huge.
What they're saying works.
It's a lot of
with lucky hit
damage.
Yeah.
Did the Shadow Clone then spawn a Shadow Clone?
I love Rain of Arrows. I love Death the other
they said lucky hit
Rogue,
works.
But I think Shadow Clone, it's its time to shine. This season.
Shadow Clone hit the gym.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at a clip of the new Shadow Clone in action. So here we've got the Aspect and Encircling Blades, the Flurry that I had mentioned earlier.
Oh, baby.
It's
doing the big AoE around both you and the Shadow Clone. Additionally, with twisting blades, when they come back and orbit around you, that Blade Dancer's aspect.
That's going to be so awesome, dude.
Come back and orbit around your Shadow Clone.
Wonderful.
Charles, you're
all
going to
the imbuements and stuff.
Rogue Flurry Shadow Clone build this season.
Yeah, it should be great. Let me know how that works out. All right, on to the Necromancer. So the Necromancer was probably the class that benefited most from a bug with the scaling of the ultimates. As I mentioned, there was some scaling with different stats.
Some double dipping.
Yeah.
And whenever there was 2 stats involved, particularly on Army of the Dead, then it was actually increasing the damage far higher than we had intended. So we have fixed that bug, and we've addressed it. But with that in mind, Necromancer is definitely the biggest benefit of the summons update. I know Shadow Clone is great, but Necromancer is the summons class.
Of course.
So they have by far the most. All of their skeletons and their golems are now going to much more consistently interact with your lucky hit procs, your bonus damage effects. Anything that increases your damage output will also increase the damage output of your minions. And on the whole, we really expect the summon Necromancer to be at its peak going into this season.
Amazing.
So channeling my Adam Jackson here. Minion stomps high.
Minion stomps are absolutely going up this season, for sure. Additionally, we've got some new, just like the Sorcerer, we've got 2 uniques that talk to Bloodwave, the unique, or the legendary, the ultimate skill. We've got 2 different unique pants that can enhance your Bloodwave in different ways. Let's take a look at a clip of those. So first we've got Indriel's Memory, and this is going to be kind of your standard Bloodwave. It still flies forward, but when it hits the end, it's going to trap enemies in a bone prison. Additionally, it modifies your Bone Spear to also become a blood skill. Now you've got a Blood Spear.
Right.
And with the inherent affix here, casting your Bone Spear reduces Bloodwave's cooldown.
It really promotes the synergy. Look at that HP. 25% max life. That's pretty big.
Get a nice loop of, hey, cast
especially
Bloodwave,
on a greater affix.
Trap them in that bone prison.
Actually insane.
Hey, that's perfect for lining up this Blood Spear. and by casting that, you're going to reduce the cooldown in a Blood Wave to be ready for the next pack.
Right. This unique alone really makes Blood and Bone, like a Blood and Bone build, come alive, which is cool.
Absolutely. The alternative, you could use Kasemi's Legacy. This one changes Blood Wave. Instead of one wave going forward, you've got two crashing in from both sides. And it's going to pull enemies towards you, and when it hits, it's going to do a big pulse of damage in the middle.
That's awesome.
It's so cool. It's very transformational in the way you think about it, the way you position it, and what your use case is, right? It's not for pushing enemies away. It's for bringing them in close and really wanting to be in the thick of combat there.
Yeah, it really makes me think about like a more melee or close range centered Necro build, whereas Indira's Memory makes me think about a ranged Necro build.
Absolutely. This is, you know,
When's the
pulls
update?
them
The
in, perfect for setting
21st
up a blood
at
surge
10 a.m.
to hit enemies right around you. So definitely looking forward to see, you know, a Blood Wave being played in a number of different ways in this new season. And finally, we've got the Spiritborn, of course, our newest class, which is very strong. It was very strong in the previous season, what's currently live on Season 6.
Minimal
We've
changes.
Made some adjustments to some of the bugged interactions that was causing their damage to scale way higher than intended, as well as a handful of nerfs across the board going into the PTR. That being said, on the PTR, we still found them to be a very strong class, arguably still the strongest.
Oh, strongest class confirmed,
so
guys.
We didn't really make too many changes. We really wanted to make sure that we brought some of the other classes up to that level, and we think the Spiritborn is in a good place. So there was actually very minimal amount of numerical adjustments to Spiritborn going into this season.
Oh, cool.
With that in mind, I wanted to highlight the Razor Wings build. There's a new unique item, the Sunstained War Crozier, as well as a new aspect, the aspect of Endless Talons. That's going to really help enhance this Razor Wing build. I think we've got a clip of that.
Oh, yes. Nice, nice.
So we've got the Sunstained War Crozier.
Oh, a new unique?
That's going to enhance all of your focus skills. They automatically benefit from all of their upgrades. You don't need to invest skill points in there. And and by casting it, you increase the damage of your potency skill, your Razor Wings, whenever you're casting focus skills.
As Razor Wings is a potency skill.
Yes.
So you get up to 200.
Yeah, so
you
really
play the boomerang
to
build.
How,
that's cool.
Razor
I like
Wings
that.
Was maybe a little bit underrepresented on the current season, and we're really looking forward to this unique and the new legendary to really bring it up to par. All right, so that covers our class updates.
Oh, right.
And once again,
that was really short.
Kind of went at high level for each class because the
I wanted to see like the actual numbers.
Rather, you know,
hopefully there's going to be a
we
blog post
didn't
probably.
Just throw up all the numbers for every single class. So I kind of painted a broad picture. Make sure you check out the patch notes for the actual changes that should be coming right.
At least we got to see the uniques.
Yeah, the patch notes are massive, so buckle up for those. They're quite long. If we went through those, that would be like a 4-hour stream. So,
4-hour stream.
Those post-stream, absolutely.
Luckily for some of the occult gems and witch power updates, we could fit kind of all the changes onto the side. So we're going to go into a bit more numbers here.
Okay, so let's take a look at the new changes on the buffs and the nerfs on these.
Occult gems were pretty strong. They were really hitting that mark of they were appealing to put into your jewelry, the rings and the amulet, and they give you a lot of defense,
nerf to Phantom Steam
and a lot of other bonuses. Some of the bonuses maybe a touch high, so we brought
what they
some
do.
of them down by just a little bit.
Right.
We still think on the whole these are
hard to remember all the
really
names.
Exciting moments to be able to craft these once you get those heads. I really like to call out the update to Witching Hour here at the end. This is a occult gem that modifies your core skill to gain the Eldritch tag, and that enables some really interesting synergies that you'll be able to explore once you get your hands on the full Witchcraft system.
Vulture Talent seems pretty good
though. Timer of 5 seconds
for damage over time builds.
It was really hard to build around.
Yeah,
35 to 50%.
You can much more consistently benefit from this effect, and it really opens up the build possibilities with the Witching Hour occult gem.
It was a bit too slow paced for how fast Diablo 4 is right now, but with 1 second on the timer, it should be a lot more playable.
For sure. We've also made some updates to the witch powers themselves, and for the witch powers, we think in general these were probably a touch weaker than we'd like. So across the board, there's some numerical improvements, especially on the poison frog servant, my favorite, the little frog.
The wee beastie.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, he got a big buff. Love that guy following us around and spitting the poison and exploding if he
poison
ever
frog
dies.
buffed by a lot.
So yeah, on the whole, we think witch powers were pretty good. I love how flashy they are in particular.
Some of them are just getting like 250% though. Like look at that, that's a big number.
Our team did a great job with all of these.
Knocked it out of the park.
All right, and with that in mind, there's also still one additional new witch power that we did not have.
A new one.
Yes.
Okay, so we got a brand new power.
Now this is a psyche witch power that empowers your overpowers. When you kill an enemy, your next overpower is going to gain some increased damage up to a maximum. And if you rank it up to at least rank 4, it'll empower your next 2 overpowers.
Excellent.
This was one that we were not able to get out on the PTR in time. It had some issues, but it was being in development. But for the actual season launch, we're going to have this out there and available. We know it kind of really rounds out the roster of which powers that were available.
Yep.
We had one less psyche power than the others. This is the last one. And we didn't really have too much support in there for overpower builds, and now we do.
Voila.
So really excited about this one. And
I wonder what the damage scales to.
Overpower.
Because if you can overpower with Rada Keep
All right, so I think
style,
that wraps up all of our balance changes. Once again, check out the patch notes for the exact
that
details.
could be something to consider.
But hope this, gets your minds turning for build crafting for next week when the season launches.
Okay.
Yeah, there is absolutely a ton of
So let's see
what I
what else
went
we're
into this
gonna
stream absolutely thinking I was going to roll Spiritborn again, and now I'm thinking I'm going to have to go Barb or Shadow Clone Rogue. Like,
Those are so sweet.
I've got my decisions cut up for me, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
And with the armor, you're going to be able to pick, one class and a bunch of builds from all of them.
Aislinn, I think what better thing to get into now than tell us about the armory.
Oh yeah, I would love to. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I kind of want to reserve. I want to reserve this section of the video because I wanted to upload this just for the class balance. It was kind of vague, but at least we have an idea on what is going to be good. So more than likely, what is going to happen, guys, is the Barbarian is going to be the Hoda Barb again because there's a lot of numbers and stats that really align with that. But who knows? I mean, Diablo 4 has been a game, to be fair though, that sometimes the best builds are always some bugged things that you can't just look at and just say that's going to be the best. But it's probably going to be Shadow Clone Rogue. Maybe Summon Necromancer, there may be some Blood and Bone one, but with the Druid, it looks like Companion Druid's probably going to be kind of the flavor of the month. But that Shred being 75% X damage, which is already basically triple, right? I don't know if that was showing that on a two-handed, but let's say you put that on a two-handed with 150, and then you have a 33% chance for it to hit double times, and it rolls, I don't know, what is it, 4 times? I mean, that number is going to be crazy strong. So I would say Companion Druid and then Shred Druid with maybe Blurred Beast is probably a pretty good thing to invest into. With Sorceress, I'm 100% ball lighting them. I mean, there's 2 brand new uniques for it. And then with Spiritborn, maybe the Razor Wings, but more likely it's going to be the same. I think Rada Keep is too strong to get, the overpower number is just too big simply to just, forgo and just forget about it. And then I think we covered all the classes, right? As far as Rogue goes, probably the Shadow Clone Rogue. So yeah, as far as Rogue goes, Shadow Clone, Barb, Hoda, and then Ball Lightning for Sork, Necromancer, probably Spirit, and then the Druid. Did we forget any of the other classes? I forgot one, but for the most part, that's what I'm thinking is going to be kind of the meta shaping up to. And the real question is, what do you guys plan to play at the start? For me personally, I'm 100% going to be playing Shadow Clone Rogue, and then probably I'll look at whatever ends up being the most OP build. We'll probably make a video on that because I think that'll be exciting. But as far as it goes, I would say the class that I'm the least excited about is probably Spiritborn because I mean, if it's just going to be mostly nerfs, how could I get excited about playing the class? There is the Razor Wing build, which there was originally a Razor Wing build that had all these things that you can shoot out and then they were returned. That got nerfed. It was in the earlier versions of the game that never got to see in public. There was a couple of people that did show it off beforehand, but that would be something exciting, but again, it doesn't exist. So pretty much for me, I'd say Spiritborn's probably going to be the least popular class, but who knows? We'll see what comes out with it. But anyways, that's the class balance update, and I want to cover that in one video.